Metric's 10th record, Romanticize The Dive, is out April 24th, and I'm so excited. We're going to go track by track through the record with Jimmy Shaw from the band. How are you?
I'm great, and I'm so appreciative that we're going to do this, and I'm so appreciative that you guys are going to play the record and that you listen to it and you have some thoughts. And
I have thoughts.
I'm excited to talk about it.
Oh, very exciting. Again, 10th record, there's seems to be in the press so far a kind of nostalgic pull with this one, and I was kind of wondering, do you think that at this point, 10 records in, you have to kind of look back in order to go forward?
I don't think that you have to, but I think that we decided to.
Mm-hmm.
I think it felt important to us. I don't know whether that was just sort of a cosmic moment or, like maybe our Saturn returned on this one. I don't know. But it felt like the right thing to do was sort of acknowledge our entire past, like internally, like not just within the narrative of the record itself, but just with ourselves. And we ended up doing a lot of things and making a lot of decisions that were sort of based on that ethos.
When it comes to starting everything off with Victim of Luck, again, first track off the record, kind of setting the tone as far as the vibe as well. At what point in the process did this one come out?
This is probably the trickiest one of the whole record for us. It was one of the first things that we wrote. It was being written while we were still working on Formentera 2, actually.
Oh, wow.
And it was sort of, we put it aside because we knew it was going to be more of a statement piece for whatever was going to happen next. So it kind of sat, on the shelf in the closet for a couple of years. And when we pulled it out and tried to get it to work for us, its storyline and its narrative took a lot of weird turns. And we weren't really sure what we were trying to say with it until almost the record was done, actually. We kind of knew it was going to be the opening track, or at least I did, and I pretended to Emily that I agreed that maybe it wasn't, but I knew that it was going to. And a lot of the reasons that we have opening tracks the way they are is because we like to be able to tell the story of the record with the opening track, both from a sonic perspective and a narrative one. You should be able to feel like halfway through the first song, you kind of know what type of Metric record you're in for, and we didn't really know where this narrative was going to go until she really landed on that, let me take you back. And she was trying to tell the story of a band, and then she realized it was our band. And then she was trying to tell the story of our band sort of through the early years. And she kept saying to me things like, well, it's just the story of this. And I'd be like, well, then just say that, and then she's like, but then this happened. It's like, well, then just say that, and it wasn't until the very end when saying those things as sort of bluntly and as openly as she did really made sense because of the opening statement to a record that we now knew what it consisted of.
How important was it to go to Electric Lady in New York?
Hugely. I can't understate what that building does to our artistic process. It's really, really wild. It was a huge part of the record's fantasies in Synthetica. A huge amount of what we did on this record, sort of, as we were saying about going back and sort of collecting in your past and bringing it forward, is we decided to put together the same team that made those two records. Gavin Brown producing, Liam O'Neill producing with me, John O'Mahony mixing, and Electric Lady was a big part of those records. So we knew that we wanted to start it there and just see how, and kind of sort of continuously check in with Electric Lady and make sure that we were on the right path. And there's kind of nowhere on the planet that is harsh like that building for my brain.
Really?
Oh yeah, it tells me that I'm wrong, in big, loud, bold words. And I was a couple of times. There was around Christmas time, 2024, we took the record there, and I was played it for our manager and one of our best friends, and it's I pressed play on the record and it was this is not it at all, not happening. And then this magical thing happened where I was walking home that night back to the hotel, and I went to this bar called The Magician, which is an old school bar that I used to go to all the time back in the day. And I walked in the door. I was by myself. I walked in the door, and they were playing All Comes Crashing, which is the single from the last record. And I think it was New York just saying hey man, this is actually what your band's supposed to sound like, just remember what you guys actually are. And I kind of sat at the bar and I ordered a Guinness and I drank half of it. And then Help I'm Alive came on next.
Do you think that they were like, oh, Jimmy Shaw's in the
No,
building?
he actually didn't, because then Synthetica came on, and I was like, okay, now you got to be kidding me. So then I went to the bartender. I was like, dude, like, you're playing my band, and he was like, no, this is my band, man. I love this band. And I was like, no, it's actually my band. And he was like kind of shocked, and then we ended up doing like a bunch of shots, and then like my friend showed up, and it became like a whole thing. And then once he knew, he was like, we're playing Metric all night, which is not what I needed, but maybe what I really needed, because. Like I said, New York was like, this is who you guys are, and this is part of your identity is wrapped up in this town. And the bar called The Magician pulled some magic on me and made me remember.
When you went back into the studio after your Magic Magician night at the bar, what was the first track that you reevaluated?
I kind of did a lot of it, actually.
Yeah?
I kind of like told everyone to take a break. I kind of just put a little email out that was like, we're just going to put everything on hold for a minute, and we're going to take the Christmas holidays and then just sort of get back in January and just sort of reassess. And I spent a lot of like, it gets dark at like 4 o'clock, so you have these like long nights of just chilling in my house with a laptop and headphones and just going through everything and trying to isolate what was making me feel like I was in that bar and what was not making me feel like I was in that bar. And I was trying to use that, like, that moment as like a litmus, for like what felt like part of our real identity and not part of our real identity.
What track on the record do you think encapsulates the real identity of Metric?
Well, there's a bunch, I mean, I think that one of the things that we tried to do the most in the making of this record is only be influenced by ourselves and go back to our early work. So when we were like kind of lost on a song and not knowing what direction to go, we weren't listening to, Interpol, Strokes, yeahs, blah, blah, like our generation, our time, or like Daft Punk or this or whatever the stuff that we love or like, has influenced us in the past. We were just going back to our own catalog, and there's a lot of like Metric references in these Metric songs.
Okay, there is a track that I really thought I felt like and I obviously I don't speak in the language of proper musicians, but I felt like there's a specific drum beat kind of tempo, a Metric tempo that showed up.
Do you remember what song it was?
Yeah, here it is. I'm gonna have to search
I wonder if it's the one that I'm thinking too.
It's in Wild Rut.
Yes.
It's a cinematic start that leads to classic Metric sonics.
Totally.
And it brought me back to Formentera. It had me curious if you have certain patterns that feel like home.
It's the same beat as Sick Muse.
That's what it is.
And it was very intentional.
Okay.
And Sick Muse is also the second song. And that was also very intentional. We're trying to like toy around with replaying specific patterns. And seeing who would catch on. And you caught on.
Ta-da. There is, what I'm trying to figure out, again, some things did kind of throw me for a loop, though. For example, Crush Forever. It starts like a religious experience. And then in my notes I have, if there's a Knight Rider remake, this is the theme tune.
It was like, so this was one of these things where, Liam O'Neill, who I know you know, who was one of the members of the Stills, and now he's the keyboard player in the Kings of Leon, and I don't know how we ended up being like brothers from different mothers, but we're totally brothers. And he lived with me and my wife during the pandemic for like a year and a half, and we're musical akin and
family.
And we're family.
Yeah.
And me and him, we made a electronic record together called Ceviche, and we've done a ton of production together, and that was one of these things that me and him just did. And we played it for Emily one day, and she was like, I love it, I want to write to this. And to me, I was like, that's kind of not really what we're doing on this record. And then it just wouldn't go away. And at one point I was like, I don't want it on the record. It's not what we're doing. It's not doing that thing that I was just talking about of referencing Metric. It's like it's an outlier, And then we were in the studio one night, and Joshua was like, play me that, what was that kind of dancey one that's like, kind of sounds like Knight Rider, that.
Really?
Well, I don't know if you said that, but
okay.
I'll give you that one.
I'm just trying to,
And I was like, oh yeah, Crush Forever, and we brought it up and played it, and he was like, if you don't put this on the record, you're crazy. Like you're nuts. And so I kept on working on it and kind of got it to this place where it was sort of like the one place on the record that we allowed ourselves to sort of go like that far outside of the metric boundary, because it felt like it wanted to like tie some rooms together, you know?
I wanted, as we talk about things that are kind of up tempo, like As If You're Here has this sparkly 80s vibe to it. I can imagine you doing like a Footloose dance test to talk in references, but the lyrics are a bit darker.
Yeah.
And I was curious about how that one started, because sometimes in a metric tune, you will kind of mask a hefty, dark lyric with tempo.
This was a really, really crazy one, actually. Again, sort of going back, this was like almost same sort of era as the early Victim of Luck. Like this is while we were still working on Formentera 2. And Liam and I were up at my place up north, which is where like I have like a little house on a river, and then our studio is right down the road from there. So
is
we
it
were
an old church?
Yes, it's in a church.
Is it creepy?
No, it's the church. Churchiness is gone completely. Okay. When we got it, it had been completely converted into like a home.
Oh, okay.
So there's no like pews or like there's nothing churchy.
Okay.
It's like all the floors are like leveled and beautiful and things, and like there was like bedrooms and like it's amazing.
Okay, I wouldn't be mad at it. I was just wondering. Sometimes there's like an ominous.
I would have been mad at it.
Okay.
It wouldn't have worked for us.
Wouldn't work. Okay, sorry, I interrupted you.
No, not at all. So we went into the studio one day, and we used to have this saying that was like, when you got nothing, do something anyway, you know, which was like, you don't always need inspiration. Sometimes you think you need inspiration, and sometimes you just need 6 hours, you know? And when we in that time especially, we tended to go in whether we had inspiration or not, and something would happen. So we went in and we were working on this tune, and then we kind of just took the last like 4 bars of the tune, and we're like, that's actually kind of cool, and made like a whole new tune. And that was basically the whole track to that song. Like chord changes, bridge, like the whole thing. And right before we left, we were like, should we just bounce it and send it to Emily? And so Liam was like, yeah, of course. So we bounced it and we sent it to Emily. And she was driving on her way up. And we sent it to her. And then we got this phone call about that a friend of ours had just committed suicide in Toronto. And we were sort of like, whoa, and we were like really taken back. And Liam had actually seen her like about 2 or 3 days before that call. Very weird call to get. Very, very weird timing. Emily called us back and she said, I don't know what just happened, but I wrote a song earlier, and it's for a man that I know that died during COVID. And I wrote this song about him, and you guys just sent me this thing, and I just sang it into my phone in my car, because the song that you guys just wrote, it's finished. Like I just sang it once. And so she got up north about 20 minutes later, and we went to the studio and she sang it, and that is the vocal take. We never redid those vocals.
Wow.
So that one happened like really fast, really, really spiritually kismety and strange, and and about some death. So not always the most comfortable stuff, but I don't know, kind of beautiful.
Yeah, definitely. It's one of those that if you listen just to the tempo of it and you get into it, you're not really processing the lyrics. You're like, all right.
Yeah,
and then you
totally.
listen and you're just like, wow, this is really heavy.
Yeah, that's a very classic metric thing to do. You know, I'm like, hey, I got this kind of peppy little jam. And Emily's like, but have you felt like this before? You know?
Going back to feelings, I'm full of feelings. There is a lot of reference to nostalgia kind of in the ether now. Everyone's obsessed with the 90s and the 2000s and indie sleaze and whatnot. And having lived in that era, the title being Romanticize The Dive, what does it feel like to be at this point in your career with that kind of being not just your starting point, but kind of just being around right now as you're trying to both kind of honor it but move forward?
I mean, in some ways it feels like a privilege, you know, because I feel like we got to experience something really cool. And we kind of got, you know, there's no hierarchy behind these things, these statements, but like we kind of got one of the last interesting moments, which was like pre, you know, the phone and the screens and the cameras and the social media and the sort of constant surveillance of everything and every move, and everyone knows everything you're doing and every product that you're buying and want, and talk about a lawnmower and it shows up in your feed 10 minutes later, you know, like it's we lived that time was the sort of the last time before that. And I think even for the people that weren't around for that time, I think that's what's being romanticized right now, and that's what's making people feel nostalgic, even if it's something that they weren't here for. And I think that really clicked for us when we realized that when we made our first record, it was called Old World Underground, Where Are You Now? And we were pining for a version of New York that was there before we were born, like, so you don't have to feel nostalgic for something that you were there for. You can feel it's actually more times than not, you're feeling nostalgic for something that you didn't get to experience, And I think that it's maybe as the that technology moment happened, it might be a good moment to reflect on it before it really is truly down the river forever, And maybe that's what's happening. I don't know. It feels kind of zeitgeisty in a way, that people are really feeling this feeling of but what if it wasn't like this, and what if it was more like it used to be, and maybe it's always that, and maybe that does happen every 20 years, but this one feels particularly potent for whatever reason.
As Dolly Parton says, the good old days when times were bad. There are certain things we wouldn't want to give up now with technology, for sure, but certain things that we definitely pine for the freedom.
I know.
Right?
We used to, when we first started touring, it was we would get in the van with a 30-page printout of map quests,
Wild.
Crazy. And then, which sucked compared to now, but then you'd get to the show and no one filmed anything, so anything could happen. And it was a different religious experience playing rock shows when the only thing that's happening is the thing in the room, and it's not connected to the rest of the world, and it's not instantaneously being broadcast to every country, and provided that even someone even cares, but you don't have the feeling that you can say what you feel. That's feeling's kind of gone.
I wanted to talk about Loyal, which has it's a real ride. There's kind of a bit LCD sound system meets Joy Division guitars. It's a real ride with really big builds. And I wanted to know about your kind of in studio as the co-producer moment with this song. Is there a point where you really have to kind of ride those highs and bring those builds up?
Yeah.
When do you know when that magic needs to happen?
For sure. I mean, it's funny with production. It's not always as intuitive as I used to think it was. I used to think that it was when you want things to be big, you just add everything. And it's actually not always like that. Learning how to make things really big and really loud and feel like they're falling apart and about to break and snap is usually requires a level of detail that I didn't really ever understand before. I used to thought you just kind of turn up, play it louder, But a lot of the time that doesn't work. But that was really, really the goal with that one, is that there's this sort of bouncy, sort of lilting melody, and her melody is so intricate, and what she's saying is so warm, and personal. And that when she gets to the to the chorus, which is just it's all about being loyal to your friends and to the person in front of you. And we just wanted it to we were listening to Low a lot. The second last Low record has this amazing song. I can't remember the name of it, but it's just it feels like your speakers are broken. And you just turn it on, you're my speakers are broken. And then you're no, this is the greatest version of distortion I've ever heard. So we wanted to get some of that in it and get this feeling that your heart was going to burst.
That's that build I was talking about.
Yeah.
Talking about loyalty, I think it's really sweet that you have the All the Feelings tour with Broken Social Scene and with Stars as well. Again, doesn't start till June. What is that? How did that kind of all get started?
I mean, this
it's surprising that it hasn't happened before.
I know. Well, it's been an idea that's been floated around for years and years and years. Not one that's really been talked about between the bands so much for a long time. But I think everyone kind of had this feeling that one day it was just going to happen. And then, some people that I've been working with on the business side of things for my entire career, that came from the Toronto scene, is friends with every single person involved, who's now sort of in a position to be able to offer us a tour like this. They've been on my back about this for about 5 years, and And finally, it was like, okay, I think this is the time. We talked about it about 2 years ago, and it was close, but there was a few issues. And then this one was like, this is it. This is the time. We got to make this happen.
Yeah.
And since pitching it to everyone, it's just been like nothing but like harmonious conversations, and there's been zero friction. I mean, we're not out there yet. I don't foresee friction. I foresee like the only issue being that you're having such a good time that you can see the end too fast, but I think it's going to be really, really magical.
There's something so magical about how each band can pull on heartstrings in your own special way, but altogether,
Yes.
all the feelings, I was like, this is the perfect name for the tour.
I know.
My friend might come in from Australia
Amazing.
to see the show.
Amazing.
Yeah. It's
I know when Emily named the tour, and then she had all that she was working on the artwork with all the sort of like bubble lettering and that thing. And when she sent it through to me, I was just like, you gotta be kidding me. This is so the vibe. And I just called Evan and Amy and I was like, do you want to smile right now? And they were like, yes. And I would send it, and they were just both like, oh my God, this is the coolest thing ever. I called Kev. I was like, you want to smile right now? He's like, yes, of course I want to smile. It's so cool.
Love it. Can we talk about Time is a Bomb, which I think is kind of a roller coaster of a track, but it's a perfect friendship anthem. Like I'm always going to be there, in the middle of the night answering your call. But I thought what was interesting is the chorus being, I love to flirt with disaster.
Yeah.
And can you give us some context on this one? Because there's like a softer ending, but that really punctuates things.
Well, for me, I mean, it's harder for me to speak to like the lyrical intention, but I can tell you that the record was finished, like completely finished, like mixed, it was done. But the mixer, John O'Mahony, kept calling me saying like, oh, we could like redo drums to this, like with this song or that song. Like we could do a couple more things that would make it better. And I was in Europe about a year ago now. And Emily calls me up and she's like, look, I have really bad news. And I'm like, oh no, what is it? And she's like, I wrote another song. And I was like, oh God, please, no, like we're done. Like I can't, please. She was like, I know, I feel the same way. But I owe it to you to send it to you. And like, if you say like you hate it, amazing. Like I don't want to work on it either, but I did write it, so I have to send it to you. It's like, okay, look, even if I like it, we're not doing it. And she was like, okay, fine. So she sent it to me and I called her back. I was like, God damn it, we got to do it. It's like, it's perfect for this record. Like it's perfect. So we called John and we were like, all right, let's get Jules back and let's redo the drums for those two songs. And then we'll do this other track and make the whole thing happen. So it was like, every record has that one song that's like, you do right at the end. It's like a really key little sort of like connective tissue song, and that was for us. It's like, it's very metric Live It Out era.
Oh, okay.
It's like, we're like rocking hard and it's like, she's saying crazy shit. And it's fun.
Love it. I wanted to jump around a little bit, if that's okay, to Clouds to Break. It's a beautiful, softer tune. Again, kind of rounding out the end of the album. But there's a little bit of hushed conversation at the end.
Yeah.
It's like a little secret. And I was like, well, Jimmy, tell me your secrets. What? Because that's a production choice.
Definitely.
It's a little Easter egg.
Definitely.
Rounding out this beautiful tune.
Definitely.
You can just give us more context on the track, but I'm nosy.
Well, that was exactly what I wanted, that feeling.
Yeah.
Whether I know what's said or not is not important. But what is important, and I'm glad that you picked up on it, was at the end of that song, we had it just end. And then I was just kept feeling like it was too abrupt. I was in like, John would call it the dusty planet, and I was like, I'm leaving the dusty planet too quickly. Like I don't want to leave that fast. And I want this sort of like this feeling of like that I'm in the room with the band. And so we just sort of like I just threw up we were like, drinking one night and we were hanging out in the studio and no one knew what I was doing. I just threw up some microphones and press record and put the organ through like a speaker and did a thing. And
there you go.
Yeah.
Let's talk. Okay, I'm just going to keep track of where we are. We're making great progress through the record.
Yes, we are.
Thank you. We didn't talk about is, sorry, my eyes are watering. I want to talk about another one that's. Did we talk about Wild Rut with the classic?
Yes.
Yes, we did. Okay. Oh, Tremolo. We talked about Tremolo beforehand, but not. Okay, Tremolo. Okay. I call this the metric track that Rihanna should cover. Maybe like do a medley with Diamonds. It's just that start.
I mean, I love that.
You know?
And if that ever happened.
So it's so good. It's
I think she tweeted about breathing underwater once.
Really?
Which was like back in like 2012 or something.
Okay.
That was one of those like weird metric moments, like in a car and someone's like, I think Rihanna just tweeted about breathing underwater. It's like, okay.
Can you? In my notes, I have it's a music lesson of sorts. You're leaving things on the dance floor, but also "Circumstance is a Bastard, Dance with Me." I thought was a great line.
Mm-hmm. I mean, I think what she's really talking about is the idea that, you know, you can put your life aside and let the music just carry you for a minute, you know, and that is one of the greater purposes of music. It won't solve your problems, but it might give you some respite from them for a minute.
When it comes to tremolo, of course, that is like a music term for folks who may not know.
But I think what she's talking about, and the reason that she kind of like got very stuck on that, was the idea that you're sort of oscillating between these feelings, and sort of like that feeling of like panic or anxiety has this like oscillation in it, you know, back and forth, and that's why I think she got attached to the word tremolo. Did
you add more trem to the guitars?
We started with it. I mean, it was like. That was one of the songs that we started with in New York at the very first Electric Lady sessions. You know, if I played you the first demo right now, you'd be like, I don't even know what that is.
Do you have it on your phone?
No, it's like 1 BPM. Like literally, like it's the slowest piece of music I've ever heard in my life. And it's like just 2 notes on the piano and Emily like kind of whispering. And, you know, I always say that Emily's demos sound like they were made on like a wax cylinder, you know? And I've got to like try to decipher what happened in like 1355, you know? But we somehow like struck on something in that song, especially the like why wouldn't I, that section, the sort of like Emily speak rap, whatever that is, and I remember very, very clearly that was the first moment I felt like I had an indication of what the record was going to feel like, not necessarily sound like or be about or any of those things, but just sort of feel like. That was my first moment, and yeah, it was around that song. The song changed quite a bit since then, but I really love it. It's to me, it's sort of like it has a similar spirit in some way to Help I'm Alive. Like it's got this sort of like big, sort of ominous, like dark light thing happening, which I feel like is a very metric thing.
I wanted to ask about Electric Lady one more time, or kind of bring up Electric Lady. Because when I do interview a lot of musicians, for example, Mumford & Sons just were here and they were talking about being there and, you know, whatever, Gracie Abrams down the hall or whoever, like, or Bon Iver is upstairs. Like, it just seems as though there's obviously so many people in the building that you can kind of bump into your contemporaries. Was that something that happened to you, or were you guys a very tight unit in...
It's funny that you said Gracie, because it did happen with Gracie, where we were that day that we were working on the song Tremolo. The guy who runs the place is an old friend, Lee, and he came in. He's very, very good at knowing who's supposed to bump into each other in the hallway and who's not. So you don't bump into people you're not supposed to, because he's just got some magic way with the building where it just doesn't happen.
It's like matchmaking.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. But he came in, and without even saying anything to me or Liam, he was just looked at Emily. He was like, "Hey, could I borrow you for a sec?" And then she came back downstairs 20 minutes later, and she was like, "Oh, I just met Gracie. She was upstairs, and Lee wanted me to go up and say hi, and she said she was a fan and listened to a bunch of our early stuff and blah, blah, blah." So it does happen. You know, we're sort of more insular than most, I think, you know. When we go there, I like Studio D, which is the top floor. Okay. Which is the little room, and what we used to call the ping pong room, because it was just a ping pong table when we made those early records. There was nothing in there, and me and Lee used to talk back in the day about us moving our Studio Giant down into that room, and then we kind of never did it, and then Black Keys took that room, and now Antonov has that room, and it's a super cool little room, but there's a door out to the roof, so there's like a big deck on the roof, and it's kind of like it's the most self-contained out of all of them. You can kind of just be there and not really see the rest of the building, and I like that room.
Noted. Now I'm wondering if I got my Mumford references. I think maybe it was Aaron Dessner who came down, not Gracie, but she's on the record as well. Regardless,
they're all there.
But yeah,
they're all the people you mentioned. They're there all the time.
Yeah.
And it's like everyone like signs the bathroom walls and shit, and it's like it's cool. I mean, there's so much talent in that building, like, you know, on a daily basis. And Lee, you know, especially this time around when we started going back, you know, we hadn't been there in 10 years or something like that, maybe more, and. He was so his version of nostalgia for like that time was so cool as well, because like I always thought it was just Electric Lady. It was like the most famous studio on the planet. But in his version of that storyline, when we started making those records there in 2009, 10, Arcade Fire was making a record there. Kanye had just made Twisted Fantasy there. But before that, it was like not a thing. And when he took that place over, he was like, it was not a cool studio. And it was like, he cites it as like Kanye, Arcade Fire, Metric being like some of the first like artists of that time to like infuse really new, cool energy in that building. Before then, it was a lot of mixers and producers that kind of had the rooms on lockdown, you know?
Interesting.
And then it kind of like went back to the artists, and that's what he's been trying to do with it ever since.
Even with the lore and the Hendrix and
I mean, you know, even the lore of Hendrix is so funny because it's like I think he bought it the year he died. Like,
okay.
Like out of his catalog, it was like almost none of it was recorded there, but the mural on the wall is Hendrix, and the thing and the energy in the building is like full Hendrix purple, you know. But it's funny how it's just. Yeah, it's a mystical little spot.
Got some inside baseball on Electric Lady here.
Yeah, for sure. There's a ghost in there for.
Really?
Oh yeah, for sure. I've never seen it, but I know people that have.
Do they mess with the faders or like?
I mean, ideally.
Yeah, you just want to let the ghost do the mix.
They just want a little production credit. That's all.
Is it a ghost of? Do you know who it is?
No.
Oh, okay.
I don't, but I know it's a woman.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah.
Cool. Now I want to go. I don't know if I'll ever have the chance, but I just want to.
You might.
Okay. You know what? I just want to bring up. I do love a full album listen. I love a track listing that flows. Sequencing, I think, is just one of the coolest arts. And it came to me when I heard "Moral Compass" as track 6. It was kind of this sonic shift in the record. Was that always a turning point track?
For a very long time, I heard that little outro piece of Tremolo going right into Moral Compass. So I had a really hard time letting those two be back to back go. Emily, actually, I think everyone actually was against it for a little while, and then I finally, when it found its little spot, sort of in the middle of the record on the vinyl, it's the end of side A, those two songs. But yeah, no, I feel like it's a really important breath. You know, like. I know that, you know, there's a lot of music out there that is, you know, more full frequency and more hardcore and more like, you know, faster and louder and all of the things than Metric is. But I feel like there's like an intensity that especially Emily has as like a lyricist, as a singer. The sort of like the attention that she sort of commands of the listener is like relatively intense, you know? And it's important to have moments where you can kind of like breathe and like kind of have a moment to like understand what you just heard, you know, and let it absorb for a second before you like go on to the next idea. It's funny when she's sequencing records because she can't hear her music like that. She's always like, next song, you know, and I'm like, Emily, you just said some crazy stuff, and you're using a lot of words, a lot of poetry, a lot of imagery to like give people a second to like figure out what just happened, and then let's move on. And I feel like that's an important. I love sequencing too, and it's a long conversation.
Yeah,
it's never something that happens quickly.
Fair, I believe that. I wanted to talk about, you're talking about Emily's voice and how she can be commanding with it. And I agree. I felt like she had a lot of vocal range on this record. For example, Anti-Gravity. She's so much range in her voice on that track. There's again like a kind of an operatic part, like a very classical. So I wanted to talk about like taking those risks.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, it's funny. I mean, she writes without thinking about how she's going to sing it. I think it's the writing is more important than the vocalization of it for her. So she ends up getting frustrated in the studio, being like, "Why did I write it like this? Like this is really difficult to perform." And yeah, it's there's a lot of stuff that's all over the map. One of the things that Gavin was a big part in making Emily do that really early on those two records, Fantasies and Synthetica. He would really push her to like scream and whisper and sing a lullaby and get punk rock about it and do all of the things that make her really dynamic. She has a really, really unique way of approaching vocals. Remember when one of the first times that the two of us hung out, way back in like, I don't know, late 90s or whatever it was, and she sang me like a Neil Young song, and I had no idea what she was singing. And I was like, what are you singing? She was like, it's Neil Young. You've heard it like a million times. But when she sings it, I can't place it. And I think that it's important as like that being one of her strongest things. Dave Hamlin, a friend of ours, he used to say, yeah, Emily sounds like an alien. Like she just has like an alien voice. Like it's not like a normal singer voice.
In the nicest way possible.
In the nicest way possible. Yeah. Like it's just sort of like not of this place, you know? And I agree. But I think that what's cool about it is that range and being able to like get to all of those different places and be able to cover all of those emotions, like she talks about a lot of stuff. So being able to sort of like show it in the voice is important.
Is there ever a moment in the studio where obviously the lyrics and the melody kind of match, but then perhaps there's like an off-kilter point where there's a heftiness or something within the lyrics that you rewrite your guitar riffs? Or was anything revisited once you got the vocals, once you got the lyrics?
Yeah, I mean, I would say that probably is fairly consistent among everything.
Okay.
Like we change lots of stuff as we go, and what I feel like as a producer, what I'm going for is like a really seamless experience. Like it's kind of I think it's akin to like film editing all the time. Like if you notice the film editing, it probably means it wasn't done very well, and if you notice like that riff or that thing or that lyric like pops out, it probably means that like it wasn't addressed that well, unless it's like the hook or like the thing that is trying to get you to pay attention to it, But I think that a lot of times like she changes stuff like all the way down. Like she'll change a word, while we're mixing and be like, we leave her mic and her vocal chain in one spot like for like a year and a half, like whatever we don't touch it, and she just goes up to it and sings like, I want to change that sentence, I want to change this word, I want to change that note. She does it all the time, and I'm kind of the same with guitars and stuff.
Okay. I mean, it's probably a very basic production question, but for me, I often wonder how set in stone things are.
Well, no, I mean, I think, I remember meeting this amazing producer named Nick Lene, and he was, we're staying at the same hotel in LA like a lot of years ago. And he was setting up to do a Nick Cave record. And he was explaining how the Nick Cave records happen. And he said he gets sort of like a fake Nick Cave band to come into the studio for like 3 or 4 days, and they play and they play and they play, and he gets everything completely dialed, and then Nick and his band walk in and they just play the record and then they leave. Wow. And that's the way it happens, So there's like a billion ways to make records. Yeah. I think the way we do it is actually quite annoying. I would way rather do it like Nick Cave does, but it seems to be the way that we do it. So
which track was the easiest? Came together, lightning in a bottle, super fast.
Geez, what are the songs again? Time Is a Bomb was really fast.
Yeah.
Time Is a Bomb was like a day. Like we just did the whole thing in a day. Everyone was there. We kind of knew what we wanted to do, we knew, again, the record was sort of done.
Right.
So it was like, oh, this is the piece that the record wants. This is what it needs. It needs that sort of metric, like pulsy thing, and like it needs the guitars. It needs that downstrokey riff. It needs the thing. It needs the Pro One synth riff, So it all just kind of like fell into place really easily. The beginning of making records is super annoying for us.
Fair. I mean, I'm impressed. I feel like we've covered everything but the last track. The last track I thought was interesting because it's fitting to end a record the way you want to leave a show, which is, I mean, just going by the title, Leave You on a High. Can you talk about why this one was just perfect to kind of wrap up the record?
Well, it was funny. I mean, that, going back to that listen that I was talking about in New York when we went bed down and I was like, I think the record's done. Here, let's go. Emily was like, we're opening with Leave You on a High. And I was like, why would you do that? Like, that's so mean. Like, it's kind of just like walking into a party and being like, don't get excited, I'm leaving. You know what I mean? Like, it's such a weird sentiment. Anyway, and I think that was like maybe one of the things that like, I was like, okay, note to self, we're not opening anything with the song Leave You on a High. So later on, it was like when the song kind of like came to be, I just held it in my head like, this is the closer. And Emily kept saying, like, she's like, I love it, I love it, I love it. I'm like, yeah, but you can love the closer. Like, I don't know, the hierarchy of like the songs that you love the most have to be like closer to the beginning of the record. Like, I get it from like a logistical standpoint, but not from a artistic, creative one. Like, you should feel the most like at the end, sort of, So I think that one really came together very fast as well. That was like really early in the process. Me, Emily, and Gavin in the studio, and Emily had these two songs. We listened to the acoustic versions of both of them, and we took the front half of one and the back half of the other. We made one song out of it, and it happened in like 2 days.
Which track are you most excited to play live? Because we know, like, from a studio to the stage, there can be a lot of different
a lot of stuff.
Things.
Well, I don't want to give too much away, but I basically like built some crazy instruments for this tour.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah, and there will sort of be like featured mostly on like Crush and more of the sort of electronic-y stuff. I didn't build like a microtonal guitar.
Oh, okay, great.
I left that to the Quebecers, but it's pretty cool, and I'm excited for what that can open up for us as we they're just being like finished now, so we'll see what happens when we start getting to use them.
Interesting. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, I'm gonna have to listen back to Crush Forever and see if I can figure out. That was my Knight Rider theme.
It's so Knight Rider. I love songs that that you're like, I have to drive to this.
Yeah. Do you do the driving test with the record?
Oh, all the time.
Yeah.
Yeah, all the time. That's why I think like I love our studio up north, but the best part about it is like driving back to the city and hearing what you just did for the last week. Like, well, sometimes it's the best because you're like, that was a great week, and other times you're like, uh-oh. Oh, it wasn't very good, actually.
Which track had, like, do you think that test is the tried and true, the driving test?
To me, it is, yeah. Yeah. It's sort of like this perfect combination between you're listening, but you're doing something else. You have to focus, but you're completely immersed.
Yeah.
It's that and the show. The show is sort of maybe the ultimate test.
Interesting. I've said interesting a lot during this entire. I'm like interesting.
I didn't know that I had anything interesting to say.
You've had a lot of intriguing. I'm going to switch it up. Intriguing things to say about this record. Well, I think we've covered it all. I really, really appreciate you taking all this time.
I appreciate you guys having us and like just being here and supporting us and supporting all the music that you guys do. I mean, Toronto wouldn't be the same without you guys.
Oh, well, thank you so much. And thanks for, again, letting us play this whole record. It's always exciting to play it as a piece of art in its entirety and get your context.
It's so rarely done that way, that when people get to listen to it that way, it's amazing.
Well, we look forward to seeing you this summer
as
well. Fun. And enjoy the tour and enjoy the release.
Thank you.
Thanks so much.